Hello, everyone, and welcome to the InsideHalos podcast. I'm your host, Bryan, and a little background from me before we start. I'm 22, been a lifelong Angels fan for as long as I can remember, and as of March 14th, 2022, I've been the owner and founder of the InsideHalos account on Instagram. I decided to start this podcast as another way to bring you guys, the fans, and a more in-depth view of the Halos. Wherever you are listening, thank you for tuning in. As of right now, I believe we are going to be on Spotify as well as YouTube. YouTube is likely going to be the main home, where you guys can see the podcast in a video form on YouTube, seeing me, seeing a little bit more information, and what I'm a little bit more like. As well, I do have a lot of ideas as far as the YouTube channel, maybe some one-off videos as far as more short, but just talking briefly about a specific topic. Today we're going to be talking about the president of baseball operations and what that might mean for the Angels. As it's been reported, Arte Moreno might be hiring a person above Perry Minasian, and what that might mean for the Halos. So obviously right now the Angels are in a bit of a weird spot, opening up the off season during this postseason month of October. Right now we have a vacancy as far as the manager position. We just fired our AGM Alex Taman as well. If I'm butchering that name, please let me know. As well, there has been rumblings, as I mentioned, that the Angels might be looking for a president. It was reported yesterday, the Athletic senior MLB writer Britt Garoli on Foul Territory, where she said, "I've heard rumblings that Perry Minasian may have somebody put above him in Anaheim." It was also reported by her as well, but on the Athletic Baseball Show podcast, I've heard rumors that the Angels might be looking for a president. Now, for those of you that don't know what a president of baseball operations is, as I found out yesterday, my dad didn't know what a president of baseball operations was until I told him what it was. Essentially, it's a GM. It's somebody above a GM position. It's just a bigger name. So basically, if the Angels were to hire a president of baseball operations, Perry Minasian would stay, assuming he does not resign from his position, and he would be working under whoever ends up being hired as president of baseball operations. Now, this would make sense as to why the Angels haven't really heard any managerial candidates outside of Buck Showalter and Benji Gill, as focus from Arte Moreno might be to hire a new president of baseball operations. This does make a lot of sense because AGM Alex Taman was fired earlier this month, which essentially would mean the AGM position would kind of go to Perry Minasian. He'd be the GM, but he'd also have somebody above him, which would end up being whoever is hired as the president of baseball operations, making the big calls while Perry is underneath, giving advisement to this GM, kind of taking over that assistant general manager role. You know what I'm saying? Now, as of right now, we have a ton of candidates for the position. It was reported by a couple people, just to start off with the most popular candidate, Kim Ng. It was reported from SNY that the industry perception is that Ng is far more likely to step briefly away from baseball executive opportunities, as she did decline to interview for the Red Sox opening. It was also reported by Mass Live the exact same thing, that some Red Sox connected people think she's taking the year off, not pursuing anything in this hiring cycle. Before we get into some candidates for the president of baseball operations job for the Angels, it's fair to assume that Theo Epstein probably won't be he'll be in consideration, but he'd probably end up not being interested in this position, specifically because he wants to be a part of an ownership group. If he's wanting to be part of an ownership group, it doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense for him to step back into the GM/president of baseball operations role, as that opportunity may arise with Tennessee or anywhere else that might end up happening. If Kim Ng was to be a candidate, and we'll just put her as a candidate, as I'm sure Artie may reach out. She did decline to interview with the Red Sox opening, as I mentioned before. She was the former Marlins GM from 2020 to 2023. She is also the first woman GM, which was a huge deal back in 2020. It was reported by many news outlets to be that first woman in baseball in a big baseball executive role. And she does have some connections with Arte Moreno, as as between the years of 2005 and 2020, she interviewed for multiple GM positions with the Mariners, Padres, Angels, the Anaheim Angels, and the San Francisco Giants. Moreno had a quote following the departure of Tony Reagans in 2011. "I think you want a good baseball man," or should I say baseball person, because there are some qualified women out there. Kind of hinting at the fact that Kim Ng might end up being hired. She didn't end up getting hired by the Angels in 2011, but something to note because she could be linked to Arte Moreno. Kim Ng, most notably known with the Marlins, has rebuilt the Marlins organization as a whole. And she did that this season in a special way, hiring first-time manager Skip Schumacher, whatever you want to say, who is a Manager of the Year candidate. Now, she'd made a bunch of moves with the Marlins. It still has plenty of work. Of course, Sandy Alcantara just went down. There's still a lot of work to do, but the Marlins ended up wanting to hire a president of baseball operations above her, and that kind of made Kim Ng resign, using her option and declining that option to seek a job elsewhere. Another option could be Chaim Bloom. Chaim Bloom, a former Red Sox chief baseball officer. He was just let go by the Red Sox. Not because he was bad, not because of anything negative. Well, negative in the Red Sox view. They don't like finishing in last place, as I've read. That is kind of the main reason why he was let go. Just too many non-playoff years, too many bad finishes. Now, Chaim Bloom, he took over the Red Sox in 2020. He had a bunch of horrible contracts attached to the team, including Mookie Betts, David Price, as well as Chris Sale. He extended Rafael Devers, let go of Bogarts, and let him walk to the San Diego Padres. But he also brought in Trevor Story, Masataka Yoshida, Alex Verdugo in the Mookie Betts trade. He was previously with the Rays, and with the Rays, he was known for his prowess in developing starting pitching. Tom Verducci reported and quoted, "No franchise understands better how to identify, develop, and maintain quality pitchers as Chaim Bloom does." Something the Angels have really lacked, especially this season. We had a lot of down years from Patrick Sandoval, Reed Detmers, Griffin Canning did well. Shohei Ohtani, he was good when healthy, still had some down year compared to last year in 2022, I should say. But it's definitely something that would be nice to have as far as development, and just changing, our development, get Matt Wise out and hopefully change the dynamic of the pitchers and actually develop them instead of not, which is kind of what we've been doing. We've been developing them backwards. Moving on to the next candidate, we got James Click. James Click is a former Astros GM. He was with the Astros from 2020 to 2022. He's the current Jays VP and baseball strategist. James Click helped build the Astros 2022 team. In my opinion, his biggest acquisition was getting Kendall Graveman from the Mariners, as well as Rafael Montero. He also brought in a couple of other players, Christian Vasquez. He brought in Trey Mancini last year as well, who Mancini didn't really play in the playoffs, but he did have that spectacular play in the World Series against the Philadelphia Phillies. James Click as well was another candidate that rejected to be the new Red Sox GM due to personal reasons. He was the Red Sox wanted to interview Click. Click declined due to personal reasons. So that might be something where he ends up not wanting to interview for the Angels for the exact same reasons. Now, Click was hired by the Astros after the cheating scandal, so he's not necessarily a cheater as far as we know. That was when the Astros were forced to let go of their GM and manager, AJ Hinch. One thing with James Click that our GMs haven't had for the past 9 years is Click made the postseason every single year. Now, you could argue, of course, he inherited a very successful Astros team who've been to the ALCS for the past 7 years. So it could be nothing to do with James Click. Of course, you still build pieces and bring pieces in to get things done and get your team to that postseason. Moving on to another candidate, John Daniels, former Rangers general manager from 2005 to 2012. And he was the president of baseball operations of the Rangers from 2013 to 2022. He's current Rays senior advisor. He also turned down the Red Sox vacancy. A lot of people are not interested in that Red Sox vacancy as well as the next person that I'm going to mention on this list. John Daniels, though, he had quite a bit of acquisitions. Of course, he worked with the team from 2005 to 2022, but he did bring in some notable names, including Nelson Cruz, Adrian Beltre, Carlos Lee, Elvis Andrus, Neftali Felice, Josh Hamilton in his prime. Of course, we, as Angel fans, Josh Hamilton means nothing. Prince Fielder, as well as Cole Hamels. Those are just some moves that John Daniels made with the Rangers during his tenure with the Rangers. He also made the playoffs in 5 years with the team. Of course, he was with the team for a lot longer than 5 years, which was 17 years with the team. He made it 5 times, which is more than any of our current GMs can say in the past 9 years. Billy Epler, Perry Minasian, as well as a little bit of Jerry DiPoto. John Daniels also held the team when the Rangers made it to back-to-back World Series, not championships. They did lose in both years in 2010 and 11, but they made it to the postseason in 2012, 10, 11, 15, 16, and 16. I don't know why I went backwards, but that's the way I read it. Something to note, we're looking for managerial candidates. He did hire Ron Washington way back when. Is there a potential connection where Ron Washington might want to come over? Maybe, maybe not. And then now my final candidate, and I mean, there's plenty others. I'm just, going over the more popular names out there, is Sam Fuld. Sam Fuld is the current Phillies GM. He's a former outfielder for many teams. But he also declined to interview with the Red Sox. I believe it was because he wanted to focus on the Phillies playoff run, which, I mean, the Phillies have been doing great and are currently leading in the NLCS. By the time this episode gets out, it might be tied. It might be 3-1. I'm recording this before Game 4 of the NLCS. Now, something about Sam Fuld, he's currently working under President of Baseball Operations Dave Dombrowski, who has been extremely successful with the Red Sox, the Phillies. I mean, he turned the Phillies franchise around. I mean, look at them now. They've been really good. And like I mentioned, he's been working under a very successful Phillies team. So bringing him in could be something that the Angels might want to do. Bring that winning culture back to Anaheim. So just to give you guys my thoughts as far as president of baseball operations, I'm for it. Obviously, Perry, is currently the general manager. He's currently in charge. He's the top dog. Whatever he says goes. Trades, acquisitions, whatever. He's not working under anybody. He has all the control right now. Of course, Artie, he's working under Artie, and Artie is Artie. But something that we need to keep in mind is Arte Moreno, if he's looking for somebody else, that means he's lost trust in Perry Minasian. We're going to see ends up shaping up this, offseason is looking special for the Angels. Obviously, you have Shohei Ohtani becoming a free agent, as well as many others. Shohei's, of course, going to be the big storyline of the offseason. And we'll talk about that more on a different episode of the podcast. But yeah, this was the InsideHalos podcast. Like I said, this is episode 1. I'm not going to lie. I don't know how to do a podcast. This is me just kind of sitting down, recording on my normal gaming setup, on my gaming microphone, as you can see. If you are on YouTube, of course, if you're on Spotify, that doesn't make any sense to you. But we're going to try this thing out. I don't know how successful it's going to be. I don't know. I won't lie. There were some nerves going into this. I did some preparation. I did some research. A lot of it has to do with just, I don't know specific advanced stuff. And if I'm going to be talking to you guys, I want to be able to give you as much information as I possibly can. Of course, I know podcasts can be opinionated, and that's kind of what it is. It's our opinion. You don't have to go with it. My personal opinion on the situation with the Angels is, please, Artie, of course we want you to sell, but we can't go that route right now. He's not going to do it this year. Perry, I think he's been a great GM. I love the players that Perry has brought in, as far as Mickey Moniak. And then you got Logan O'Hoppe, Zach Neto, Nolan Shanuel, Brandon Drury he's brought in, who's done well as far as an acquisition. You got Carlos Estevez. Of course, you have some failed signings like Tyler Anderson being the big one and the most notable. He did not sign Anthony Rendon, if I am correct. Yeah, there's a couple things with Perry that I'm not the biggest fan of. I don't think he used the waiver wire as much as he should. Zach Plesac is a guy that I would have loved to claim. He just elected free agency with the Guardians. He was waived earlier in the season, so we could have gotten him for nothing. But now we have to sign him to potentially a minor league deal if we ended up wanting to go that route. But there's a ton of others. I mean, the Braves got a couple of relievers that I think the Angels could have used as well. But just certain aspects with Perry, I don't like his meddling. He's the quote unquote puppet master. I think he was pulling all the strings with Phil Nevin. I don't really think this season was Phil Nevin's fault. Of course, we have injuries. Those, you can't blame the management on that. But specific moves as far as bullpen usage, I think was more so Perry pulling the strings. 3, 2, 1. You also have Ray Montgomery, who's was hired as the bench coach, moved to the bench coach from the front office so he could be Perry Minasian's eyes in the dugout, which I think is completely wrong. I think if you're the manager, obviously take the information, take the analytical that the front office gives you, but don't be told what to do. You're going to be the one making decisions, and you're going to be the one that should have the final say, how to make the lineup, how to use your bullpen. That should be on the manager, and I don't think it was this season. Joe Madden was another guy who kind of revealed that, saying that Perry was too much telling him what to do, and I'm sure it continued with Phil Nevin. But that's going to be the end of this podcast, episode 1 of the InsideHalos podcast. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you guys did, please do like and subscribe. I don't know what it is on Spotify. I believe it's follow the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, whatever it is. If you guys did enjoy and are hoping to see episode 2. As of right now, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't know when the next episode is going to be. I didn't even know when I would record episode 1. I did just get hired to a job, so my schedule is going to get a lot more busy, and I'm not going to have as much time to record. Ideally, I'm going to try and get a video or podcast out once a week. Maybe could be once every 2 weeks. It really just depends, especially this off season. We're in a spot right now where there's not going to be a bunch of news trickling out, so I kind of might just have to wait on that. They might be sporadic, but definitely subscribe, follow, to stay up to date with the latest stuff, all things Angels. And I'm gonna get off. I'm gonna play some Spider-Man, but we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Thanks for watching and listening to the InsideHalos podcast.